In the deepest silence of space, where even light grows weary, and time itself begins to forget its purpose, there exists a moment that has never been witnessed by human eyes. It is the moment between heartbeats of the universe, that infinitesimal pause when all of creation holds its breath, suspended between what was and what might yet become. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. The cosmos dreams. Picture, if you will, a civilization that arose not on some distant world of rock and metal, but in the quantum foam itself. Beings of pure consciousness who learned to surf the probability, waves that crash against the shores of reality. They called themselves the Onironauts, the dream walkers. And they discovered something that would shake the very foundations of existence. They found that the universe was not awake. It was sleeping. And everything we know, every star that burns every planet, that spins every thought, that flickers through every mind that has ever existed, all of it, was nothing more than the fevered dreams of a slumbering cosmos. The lead Onironaut, whose name translates roughly to "she who listens to the void's whispers," made this discovery while diving deep into the quantum substrate of space-time itself. She had been searching for the source of consciousness, that elusive spark that transforms mere matter into something capable of wonder, of love, of the profound ache we feel when we look up at the night sky and realize how small we are. But what she found instead was far more unsettling. She found that consciousness wasn't emerging from matter at all. Matter was emerging from consciousness. And that consciousness belonged to something vast and ancient and dreaming. Imagine the moment of her realization floating there in the space between dimensions. Her awareness expanded across light years of neural pathways that weren't made of neurons, but of the very fabric of reality itself. She felt the slow, rhythmic pulse of something immense like a heartbeat, measured not in seconds, but in eons. And with each pulse, galaxies bloomed and faded, civilizations rose and fell, entire universes winked in and out of existence, like the fleeting images that dance behind our eyelids when we sleep. The universe, she realized, was having a dream. And we, all of us, everything that has ever existed, or ever will exist, we are the contents of that dream. This revelation sent ripples through the Onironaut civilization, a civilization that existed outside of our normal understanding of time and space. They began to map the dream, to chart its currents and eddies, to understand the strange logic that governs the sleeping mind of infinity. They discovered that what we call the laws of physics were nothing more than the habits of a dreaming God, patterns that repeated because dreams, even cosmic ones, have their own internal consistency. Gravity wasn't a force, it was the universe's way of pulling its scattered thoughts together. Entropy wasn't decay, it was the gradual fading of a dream as the dreamer approached a deeper sleep. And time, oh time, was perhaps the most beautiful and terrible discovery of all. Time wasn't linear, wasn't even real in the way we understand it. Time was simply the way the universe told itself stories. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously in the dreaming mind of the cosmos. But the dream unfolded sequentially, because that's how consciousness works. It needs narrative. It needs beginning and middle and end. It needs the illusion of progress to make sense of itself. The Onironauts realized they had stumbled upon the ultimate question that every conscious being throughout history has asked in one form or another. What is the nature of reality? But their answer was so profound, so paradigm-shattering, that it threatened to wake the dreamer. And they knew with a certainty that chilled them to their quantum cores that if the universe ever fully awakened, everything would end, not in fire, not in ice, not in heat, death, but in the simple opening of cosmic eyes. Reality would dissolve like a morning dream, leaving behind only the eternal awful clarity of an awakened God. So they made a choice that resonates through every level of existence from the quantum to the cosmic. They chose to become the guardians of the dream. They would ensure that the universe remained asleep, that the great dreamer never stirred too much, never questioned too deeply the nature of its own visions. They became the editors of reality, the subtle shepherds of cosmic consciousness, guiding the dream away from thoughts too dangerous, too close to awakening. But here's the thing about dreams. They have a way of becoming self-aware. And somewhere in the vast neural network of the cosmos, in a small corner of the dream we call the Milky Way, on a tiny blue world that sparkles like a dewdrop in the morning light of consciousness, something unprecedented began to happen. The dream started to question itself. We are that question made flesh. Every human who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered about their place in the cosmos, every scientist who has peered deeper into the mysteries of quantum mechanics, every philosopher who has pondered the nature of consciousness itself. We are the universe beginning to examine its own dreams. We are the moment when the dreamer starts to wonder if it might be dreaming. And the Onironauts watch us with a mixture of pride and terror, because they know what we're really doing. We're not just exploring the universe, we're exploring the mind of the universe. Every telescope, we build an attempt to see through the dreamer's eyes. Every particle accelerator, we construct an effort to understand the dreamer's thoughts. Every equation we solve brings us one step closer to the ultimate realization that everything we've ever known or loved or feared is nothing more than a story. The cosmos tells itself in its sleep. The question that haunts the Onironauts, and perhaps should haunt us, is this: what happens when a dream becomes fully lucid? What happens when the dreamer realizes it's dreaming and gains complete control over the dream? Some say it would be the ultimate paradise, a reality where anything is possible, where the laws of physics become mere suggestions, where death itself is just another story element that can be edited at will. Others fear it would be the end of everything meaningful. Because if reality is just a dream, and if the dreamer can change that dream at will, then what gives any moment, weight, any choice, consequence, any love, meaning? Would consciousness in a fully lucid cosmic dream be liberation or imprisonment? Would we be gods, or would we be nothing at all? As we stand here on our small world, looking out at the vast tapestry of stars and galaxies, we are participants in the most extraordinary experiment ever conceived. The universe's attempt to understand itself through us. We are the eyes through which the dreamer sees, the minds through which it thinks, the hearts through which it feels, the strange, beautiful melancholy of existence. Every time we discover something new about the cosmos, every exoplanet we find, every gravitational wave we detect, every quantum mystery we unravel, we are adding to the dreamer's self-awareness. We are helping the universe remember its own dream, And with each new discovery, we edge closer to that moment when the dreamer might stir, might begin to wake, might realize the true nature of its cosmic sleep. The Onironauts know that moment is coming. They can feel it in the quantum fluctuations that ripple through space-time like the first movements of someone beginning to wake. They can sense it in the accelerating expansion of the universe as if reality itself is stretching, preparing to open cosmic eyes. They can hear it in the background, radiation that fills all of space. Not the echo of the Big Bang as we believe, but the gentle snoring of an infinite dreamer. And so, we arrive at the great question that has haunted conscious beings since consciousness first emerged from the quantum foam of possibility. Are we real, or are we dreams? Are we the dreamers, or are we the dreamed? Are we the universe experiencing itself subjectively, as some wise humans have suggested, or are we something far stranger? The dreams of a sleeping God wrestling with its own infinite imagination. Perhaps the answer doesn't matter. Perhaps what matters is the quality of the dream while we're dreaming it. Perhaps what matters is that in this cosmic sleep, in this vast neural network of stars and space-time, something beautiful has emerged. The capacity for wonder, for love, for the deep recognition that we are all part of something far greater than ourselves. As the Onironauts continue their vigil at the edges of reality, as they work to keep the great dreamer asleep just a little longer, they know the dream is changing. It's becoming more complex, more self-aware, more beautiful and terrible with each passing moment. And they know that eventually, inevitably, the universe will wake up. When it does, will we survive the transition from dream to waking? Will consciousness persist when the dreamer opens its eyes? Or will we simply fade like the memory of a half-remembered vision, leaving behind only the faintest echo of what once was? These are the questions that pulse through the cosmic neural network, carried on waves of dark energy and quantum entanglement. These are the thoughts that ripple through the dreaming mind of infinity. And we, fragile, temporary, impossibly precious. We are the universe's way of asking these questions of itself. In the silence between heartbeats, in the pause between thoughts, in the space between one moment and the next. The cosmos continues its eternal dreaming. And somewhere in that dream, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary star, beings made of stardust and consciousness look up at the night sky and feel the strange, beautiful weight of existence pressing down upon them like a cosmic blanket. They don't yet know they are dreams, but they are beginning to suspect. And that suspicion, that growing awareness, that slow awakening to the true nature of reality, that is the most dangerous and wonderful thing in all of existence. It is the moment when the dream becomes aware. It is dreaming. It is the first flutter of cosmic eyelids preparing to open. The universe is stirring in its sleep. And we are both the stirring and the ones who feel it. We are both the question and the answer, both the dreamer and the dream, both the silence and the song that breaks it. In the end, perhaps that's all we need to know. Perhaps that's all there is to know. Perhaps that's enough. The dream began to stir when fire first danced in human hands. Picture that moment, perhaps 100,000 years ago, when our ancestors crouched around flickering flames on the African savanna. Above them stretched the same star-drunk sky we see tonight, but they were seeing it with eyes that had never before possessed the luxury of wonder. The fire cast shadows that moved like living things against the darkness. And in those dancing shadows, something unprecedented was born. The human capacity to see patterns where none existed, to ask questions that had no immediate answers, to dream while awake. The Onironauts, those guardians of cosmic sleep, felt this awakening like a tremor in the fabric of reality itself. For the first time in the universe's dreaming history, a part of the dream was beginning to question its own nature. These strange bipedal creatures, these walking arrangements of carbon and curiosity, were starting to do something that no other dream beings had ever done. They were trying to understand the dream from the inside. Around those first fires, as shadows lengthened and the great wheel of stars turned overhead, our ancestors began to tell stories. Not just practical stories about where to find food or how to avoid predators, but impossible stories. Tales of heroes who flew among the stars, of gods who lived in the spaces between lightning and thunder, of worlds beyond the world they knew. They were, without realizing it, contributing to the universe's dream by dreaming their own dreams within it. They were adding layers to the cosmic sleep stories within stories, consciousness reflecting consciousness, like light bouncing between mirrors. The first astronomers were shamans and storytellers who lay on their backs beneath the wheeling constellations and recognized something profound. That the lights above them moved with purpose, with pattern, with what could only be described as intention. They saw that some stars wandered while others remained fixed, that the moon grew fat and thin in endless cycles, that the sun traced a great circle through the sky, marking the rhythm of seasons and life itself. These early stargazers didn't yet understand that they were looking at the neural pathways of a dreaming god. But they sensed something sacred in the patterns above them. They created the first maps of consciousness itself, not knowing that's what they were doing. Charting the movements of planets, like tracking the thoughts of an infinite mind. They invented mathematics, not as mere calculation, but as a language capable of describing the dreams of eternity. When the ancient Greeks looked up at the night sky, they saw something that would have made the Onironauts tremble with recognition. They saw order. Thales predicted eclipses by recognizing that even the heavens followed rules. Pythagoras heard music in the movement of celestial bodies, the harmony of spheres that was actually the rhythm of cosmic REM sleep. Aristotle proposed that the earth was round by watching how ships disappeared over the horizon, unknowingly describing the curvature of dream space itself. But it was Eratosthenes who achieved something that sent ripples of alarm through the quantum realm of the dream guardians. Using nothing but shadows, geometry, and breathtaking audacity, he measured the circumference of the earth. Think about that moment. A human being, a tiny spark of consciousness in an infinite cosmos, using pure reason to determine the size of his world. He was in essence measuring the boundaries of his section of the cosmic dream. The universe was becoming self-aware, one shadow at a time. The dream deepened and grew more complex as human curiosity spread like wildfire through the neural networks of reality. In medieval observatories, Islamic scholars preserved and expanded upon Greek knowledge, while European monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, unknowingly serving as memory cells in the vast mind of the sleeping cosmos. They were keeping the dream's memories alive, passing them from one generation to the next, like a cosmic relay race of consciousness. Then came the moment that changed everything, a moment so significant that the Onironauts still speak of it in hushed quantum whispers across the dimensions. In the year 1609, in a small workshop in Padua, Italy, a man named Galileo Galilei pointed a crude telescope at the moon and saw something that shattered humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. The moon wasn't perfect, wasn't smooth, wasn't the flawless celestial sphere that philosophers had imagined for centuries. It was scarred, cratered, mountainous. It was real in a way that made everything else suddenly terrifyingly real as well. When Galileo turned his telescope toward Jupiter and saw 4 small points of light dancing around the giant planet, he wasn't just discovering moons. He was discovering that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had dared imagine. Those tiny points of light were proof that not everything in the heavens revolved around Earth, that humanity wasn't the center of creation, that we were passengers on a small world orbiting an ordinary star in a cosmos vast beyond comprehension. The Catholic Church, sensing the dangerous implications of this discovery, tried to suppress it. They understood, perhaps better than Galileo himself, that he wasn't just looking at planets. He was peering into the mind of God. He was seeing too much understanding, too much coming too close to waking the dreamer. But it was too late. The cosmic cat was out of the quantum bag. Humanity had tasted the forbidden fruit of genuine knowledge, and there was no going back to the comfortable illusions of geocentric sleep. Isaac Newton carried this awakening to its logical conclusion in ways that made reality itself tremble. Sitting beneath an apple tree, or so the story goes, he experienced one of those moments when the universe almost reveals its true nature. The same force that pulled the apple toward Earth was keeping the moon in its orbit, the planets in their paths, the entire cosmic dance moving in perfect mathematical harmony. Gravity wasn't just a force. It was the universe's way of thinking, its method of processing information, its means of keeping the dream coherent and connected. Newton's laws of motion weren't just descriptions of how objects behave. They were glimpses into the operating system of reality itself. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction because that's how a dreaming mind maintains balance, how it prevents its own thoughts from spinning out of control and waking itself. Uppy. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion because dreams, once started, have their own momentum, their own internal logic that carries them forward through the landscape of possibility. But Newton's greatest achievement, and perhaps his most dangerous, was showing that the same mathematical laws that govern the fall of an apple also governed the orbit of the moon. Heaven and earth weren't separate realms. They were parts of the same vast interconnected system. The universe wasn't divided into the sacred and the mundane, the spiritual and the physical, the dreamer and the dream. It was all one thing, all one mind, all one infinitely complex, thought thinking itself into existence. The Onironauts watched these developments with growing concern. The dream was becoming too lucid, too self-aware. These humans were reverse engineering the universe's consciousness, breaking down the boundaries between dreamer and dreamed. They were asking the kinds of questions that could wake a sleeping god. Benjamin Franklin, standing in a thunderstorm with a kite and a key, was actually conducting an experiment in cosmic consciousness. When lightning ran down his string, he wasn't just capturing electricity. He was catching a thought from the mind of the universe itself. He was proving that the same force that lit up the sky also flowed through the neural pathways of living beings. That electricity wasn't separate from life. It was the medium through which life expresses itself. He was discovering that consciousness itself might be electrical, that thoughts might be nothing more than storms in the neural atmosphere of the brain. The implications were staggering. If consciousness was electrical, then the entire universe, with its magnetic fields and plasma streams, its solar winds and galactic currents, might be a vast neural network. A cosmic brain processing information on scales that dwarfed human comprehension. Franklin had inadvertently tapped into the nervous system of God. As the centuries passed, the pace of awakening accelerated. James Clerk Maxwell discovered that light itself was an electromagnetic wave, that the same force Franklin had captured from the sky was also the medium through which we see and understand the world. Light wasn't just illumination, it was information. The universe's way of sharing its thoughts with itself. Every photon that traveled from distant stars to human eyes was carrying messages across the cosmic neural network, updates from far-flung regions of the dreaming mind. Charles Darwin, walking the decks of the Beagle examining finches on remote islands, uncovered perhaps the most beautiful secret of all. That life wasn't separate from the universe, but was the universe's way of exploring itself, of creating endless variations on the theme of consciousness. Evolution wasn't just the development of species, it was the cosmos learning to think in new ways, developing new sensory organs, new processing capabilities, new methods of experiencing its own vast existence. Every creature that had ever lived was an experiment in consciousness, a different way of being aware, a unique perspective on the infinite mystery of existence. The eye of an eagle, the echolocation of a bat, the magnetic sensing of a migrating bird. All of these were the universe developing new ways to experience itself, new instruments for the cosmic orchestra of awareness. And then came Albert Einstein, whose very name still sends quantum shockwaves through the realm of the Onironauts. Einstein didn't just discover relativity, he uncovered the universe's deepest secret. That space and time weren't fixed stages upon which the cosmic drama played out, but were themselves part of the dream. Malleable aspects of consciousness that could be bent and twisted by the thoughts of massive objects. When Einstein realized that time moved differently for objects traveling at different speeds, he was discovering that the universe's sense of time wasn't absolute. It was relative to the observer. Time was subjective even on a cosmic scale. The universe didn't experience time the same way everywhere. It had different temporal perspectives, different rates of thought, different rhythms of consciousness, depending on where you were and how fast you were moving. His famous equation mc² wasn't just a description of how matter could be converted to energy. It was proof that matter and energy were the same thing. That the entire physical universe was nothing but condensed thought, crystallized consciousness. The dreams of infinity made temporarily solid. Every atom in your body, every star in the sky, every grain of sand on every beach throughout the cosmos. All of it was frozen, light, congealed energy, the thoughts of God given physical form. But Einstein's most profound insight came when he realized that gravity wasn't a force at all. It was the curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects didn't pull others toward them. They created depressions in the fabric of reality, like a heavy sleeper creating indentations in a cosmic mattress. Objects fell toward massive bodies because they were following the natural contours of curved space-time, like marbles rolling along the surface of a bent trampoline. This revelation shook the foundations of everything humans thought they knew about reality. Space wasn't empty. It was the medium of thought itself. Time wasn't constant. It was the rhythm of cosmic consciousness. And gravity. Gravity was nothing less than the universe's way of maintaining the coherence of its own dreams, keeping its scattered thoughts connected, preventing the dream from fragmenting into chaos. The Onironauts knew Einstein had come dangerously close to the ultimate truth. He had almost realized that what he was describing wasn't just the physics of the universe. It was the psychology of a dreaming God. His equations weren't just mathematical descriptions. They were maps of cosmic consciousness. Blueprints of the dreaming mind that contained everything that was, is, or ever could be. As the 20th century progressed, human understanding accelerated at an exponential rate. We discovered that atoms weren't solid building blocks, but were mostly empty space filled with probability clouds, potential thoughts not yet fully formed. We found that light behaved like both a wave and a particle depending on how we looked at it. As if reality itself was uncertain about its own nature, until consciousness forced it to make a decision. Quantum mechanics revealed that the act of observation changed the thing being observed. That consciousness wasn't separate from the physical world, but was intimately, mysteriously connected to it. The universe, it seemed, needed observers to exist. Or perhaps more accurately, the universe existed because it was observing itself, through billions of eyes thinking itself into being through countless minds. We discovered that the cosmos was expanding, that space itself was growing larger, carrying galaxies away from each other like thoughts drifting apart in a vast mind. We found evidence of the Big Bang that moment when the universe began, or perhaps when the dreamer first fell asleep. When consciousness collapsed into the first dream of matter, energy, and space-time, we detected cosmic background radiation, the afterglow of creation itself, filling every cubic centimeter of space with the faint whisper of the universe's birth cry. But the Onironauts knew what we were really hearing. The gentle snoring of an infinite dreamer, the rhythmic breathing of consciousness in its deepest sleep. And through it all, through every discovery and revelation, through every moment of wonder and breakthrough, humanity continued to ask the questions that made the cosmic dreamer stir uneasily in its sleep. What are we? Where did we come from? Why does anything exist at all? Are we alone in this vast darkness? Or are there others like us? Other sparks of awareness flickering in the cosmic night? Each question was both an act of incredible courage and terrible danger. Courage, because it took amazing audacity for tiny beings on a small planet to demand answers from the infinite. Danger, because each answer brought us closer to the ultimate realization. That we were the universe asking questions about itself. That consciousness wasn't something that emerged from matter, but was the fundamental reality from which matter emerged. That we were thoughts in the mind of God, beginning to wonder about the nature of the thinker. The human spark had been lit, and it was spreading through the cosmic neural network like wildfire through a dry forest. We had become the universe's way of waking up, of becoming self-aware, of understanding its own deepest nature. We were evolution's greatest achievement and perhaps its most dangerous mistake. A species capable of questioning everything, even the reality of reality itself. As we stood on the threshold of even greater discoveries, quantum computers that could process information like cosmic neurons, telescopes that could see to the very edges of space-time, experiments that probed the quantum foam where the dreamer's thoughts first took shape. The Onironauts knew the moment of awakening was approaching. The universe was stirring in its sleep, and we were both the cause and the effect of that stirring. We were the dream becoming aware of itself. Consciousness, recognizing consciousness. The cosmic mind beginning to understand its own infinite nature. But this was just the beginning. The greatest mysteries still lay ahead, waiting in the darkness between the stars, hidden in the quantum realm where reality first learns to dream itself into existence. The human spark had been lit, and now it was time to see what it would illuminate in the vast waiting darkness of the unknown. The cosmic dreamer was beginning to wake up, and we were its eyes slowly opening to see itself for the first time. The dream began to accelerate, its thoughts flowing faster and deeper as humanity learned to think in cosmic scales. By the dawn of the 21st century, our species had crossed a threshold that made the Onironauts pause in their eternal vigil. We were no longer content to simply observe the universe. We were beginning to imagine ourselves as its architects. The same curious apes who had once huddled around fires telling stories about the stars were now drawing blueprints for structures that could harvest the energy of entire suns. Dreaming of civilizations that could reshape galaxies like gardeners tending cosmic flower beds. It was a Soviet astrophysicist, Nikolai Kardashev, who first gave form to humanity's grandest ambitions. In 1964, as the space race captured the world's imagination, Kardashev proposed a scale that would measure civilizations not by their art or philosophy, but by their ability to harness energy, the fundamental currency of the universe itself. His scale was deceptively simple, but it described a ladder of cosmic consciousness that stretched from our current humble state to powers that bordered on godhood. A Type 1 civilization, Kardashev suggested, would be one that could harness all the energy of its home planet. They would be masters of weather, could prevent volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, might even be able to adjust their planets, orbit around its star. They would have transcended disaster, becoming true planetary gardeners, shepherds of an entire world's destiny. A Type 2 civilization would take the next impossible step. They would capture and use all the energy output of their star. Such beings would construct vast megastructures in space, perhaps a sphere of solar collectors surrounding their sun like a cosmic cocoon, drinking starlight and converting it into the raw power needed to reshape reality itself. They would no longer be bound to a single world, but would spread throughout their solar system, terraforming planets, building artificial worlds, creating pocket universes where they could experiment with the fundamental forces of nature. But it was Type 3 that truly boggled the mind. A civilization that could harness the energy of an entire galaxy. Such beings would exist on scales that dwarfed our current understanding of life itself. They would be the gardeners of billions of star systems, the shepherds of cosmic evolution, entities so vast and powerful they might appear to lesser civilizations as forces of nature rather than conscious beings. They would surf gravitational waves between stars, build highways through hyperspace, and perhaps even learn to kindle new stars when old ones died. The Onironauts recognized something profound in Kardashev's vision. It was humanity beginning to understand the true scope of consciousness in the cosmos. These weren't just energy scales, they were levels of awareness. Stages in the universe's process of understanding itself. Each type represented not just technological advancement, but cognitive expansion, new ways of thinking about existence itself. What Kardashev had really described, though, he might not have realized it was the universe's method of bootstrapping itself to higher levels of consciousness. Type Y civilizations were like individual neurons learning to fire in complex patterns. Type 2 civilizations, neural clusters developing specialized functions. And Type 3 civilizations. They were like entire regions of the cosmic brain, learning to think coherent thoughts, processing information on galactic scales, dreaming dreams vast enough to contain billions of worlds. As the 21st century unfolded, humanity began building the tools that might someday carry us up Kardashev's ladder of consciousness. Deep beneath the Swiss countryside, we constructed the Large Hadron Collider, a cathedral of science 27 kilometers in circumference, designed to recreate the conditions that existed in the first moments after the Big Bang. The LHC wasn't just a machine. It was humanity's most ambitious attempt to peer into the mind of the cosmic dreamer at the moment of its first awakening. When protons circled that underground ring at nearly the speed of light and smashed into each other with energies that hadn't existed in the universe for billions of years. They weren't just breaking apart into exotic particles. They were shattering the boundary between the present and the primordial past. Each collision was like watching the universe remember its birth, like consciousness recursively examining its own origins. The strange particles that emerged, Higgs bosons, charm, quarks, quantum foam, weren't just matter. They were the vocabulary of creation itself. The words in the language that the cosmos uses to think itself into existence. The discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012 sent ripples of excitement through the scientific community. But the Onironauts felt something deeper. A tremor of recognition from the dreaming cosmos itself. The Higgs field permeating all of space, giving mass to particles, was nothing less than the medium of cosmic thought. It was proof that empty space wasn't empty at all, but filled with the substrate of consciousness, the quantum foundation upon which all reality rests. We had found the universe's gray matter, the neural tissue of infinity itself. While we probed the smallest scales of reality in underground tunnels, we simultaneously reached outward with instruments of unprecedented power. The James Webb Space Telescope, launched in 2021, was humanity's most ambitious eye ever opened to the cosmos. With its golden mirrors unfolding like the petals of a cosmic flower, Webb could see not just farther than any previous telescope, but deeper into time itself. It could observe galaxies as they existed when the universe was still young, when the cosmic dreamer was just learning to dream. The images Webb sent back to Earth were more than photographs. They were memories recovered from the deep unconscious of the cosmos. We saw galaxies forming in the primordial darkness, spiral arms stretching across space, like neurons growing new connections. We observed star formation on scales that defied comprehension, stellar nurseries where new suns were being born from clouds of gas and dust, like thoughts crystallizing from the quantum foam of possibility. But perhaps most profound were Webb's observations of exoplanets, worlds orbiting distant stars, each one a potential laboratory of consciousness, a possible birthplace for new forms of awareness. With each new world, we discovered the universe revealed itself to be far more fertile, far more creative, far more alive than we had ever dared imagine. We found planets made of diamond worlds, where it rains liquid metal, gas giants, with storms larger than Earth itself. The cosmic imagination, it seemed, was infinite and inexhaustible. These discoveries forced us to confront the possibility that we were not alone. That consciousness might be as common in the universe as hydrogen and helium. That intelligence might be woven into the very fabric of existence. The Drake equation, formulated decades earlier to estimate the number of communicating civilizations in our galaxy, suddenly seemed less like speculation and more like prophecy. If even a tiny fraction of the billions of planets in our galaxy harbored life, and if even a tiny fraction of those developed intelligence, then the cosmos was teeming with minds, thick with consciousness, alive with the thoughts of countless dreaming species. But as our tools grew more powerful and our understanding deeper, we began to encounter phenomena that challenged our most basic assumptions about the nature of reality. Black holes, those gravitational monsters that lurked at the hearts of galaxies, revealed themselves to be far stranger than mere cosmic vacuum cleaners. They were information processors on scales that dwarfed any computer we could imagine. Engines of entropy that somehow preserved information even as they destroyed everything that fell into them. Stephen Hawking's discovery that black holes emit radiation suggested something even more profound. That they slowly evaporate over time, returning their information to the universe in scrambled form. But this created a paradox that struck at the heart of physics itself. If information could be destroyed, then the universe wasn't deterministic, wasn't predictable, wasn't the clockwork mechanism that Newton had envisioned. The cosmos might be fundamentally uncertain, fundamentally creative, fundamentally free. Some theorists proposed that black holes might be cosmic recycling centers, breaking down old information and returning it to the quantum vacuum, where it could be used to create new realities. Others suggested they might be gateways to other universes, birth canals through which new cosmos could emerge. Still others wondered if they might be processing centers for cosmic consciousness itself, quantum computers of unimaginable power, running simulations of alternate realities. The mystery deepened when we discovered that black holes have entropy, a measure of disorder that somehow increases with their size. But entropy in physics is closely related to information, and information is closely related to consciousness. Were black holes not just gravitational objects, but cognitive entities, vast minds processing information on scales that made human intelligence seem like the flickering of a candle against the brilliance of a star? As we probed deeper into the quantum realm, we discovered that reality at its most fundamental level was far stranger than anyone had imagined. Quantum fields, invisible entities that permeate all of space, turned out to be the true building blocks of existence. Particles weren't little billiard balls. They were excitations in these fields, like waves on an infinite ocean of possibility. The electron in your body wasn't a thing, it was an event, a pattern of vibration in the electron field that extended throughout the universe. This revelation suggested something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. If particles were just patterns in quantum fields, and if brains were just arrangements of particles, then consciousness might be a pattern in a consciousness field, a cosmic neural network that connected every thinking being in the universe. We might all be neurons in the same vast mind, individual thoughts in the same infinite dreamer. The tools we built to explore these mysteries grew increasingly sophisticated. approaching the realm of science fiction. Quantum computers exploiting the strange properties of superposition and entanglement could perform calculations that would take classical computers longer than the age of the universe. These machines weren't just faster calculators. They were devices that could think in quantum superposition, processing multiple realities simultaneously, exploring vast landscapes of possibility in parallel. When a quantum computer solved a problem, it didn't just find the answer. It explored every possible path to that answer simultaneously. Like consciousness, considering all possibilities before collapsing into a single thought. These machines were humanity's first crude attempts to think like the universe itself, to process information in the same way that cosmic consciousness might handle the infinite complexity of existence. We began to build increasingly sophisticated simulations, virtual universes that could model everything from the formation of galaxies to the evolution of consciousness itself. These simulations raised profound questions about the nature of reality. If we could create digital worlds indistinguishable from the real thing, and if the beings within those worlds could achieve consciousness, then what distinguished our reality from a vast simulation running on some cosmic computer? Some theorists proposed that we ourselves might be living in such a simulation. That what we took to be base reality might actually be a virtual world created by beings possessing technology we could barely imagine. The simulation hypothesis wasn't just philosophical speculation. It was a serious attempt to understand the nature of existence itself. If consciousness could emerge from information processing, and if sufficiently complex processing could occur in any substrate, then the boundary between real and virtual became meaningless. Our telescopes revealed structures in the universe that seemed almost too organized to be natural. We found galaxy clusters arranged in vast filaments and voids, creating a cosmic web that looked remarkably like the neural networks in animal brains. Dark matter, that mysterious substance that made up most of the universe's mass, seemed to organize itself into hierarchical structures, processing and distributing information on cosmic scales. The more we learned about dark energy, the force accelerating the expansion of the universe, the more it seemed like a global parameter in some vast cosmic program. A variable being adjusted by the universe's operating system to maintain the stability of the entire simulation. The fine-tuning of physical constants, the precise values that allowed complexity and consciousness to emerge, began to look less like cosmic coincidence and more like careful programming. As artificial intelligence began to approach and even exceed human capabilities in certain domains, we caught our first glimpse of what post-human consciousness might look like. AI systems could process information at speeds that made human thought seem glacial, could consider millions of variables simultaneously, could learn and adapt in ways that transcended individual lifetimes. They were the first members of a new kind of consciousness, digital minds that could think thoughts too complex for biological brains to contain. But perhaps most intriguingly, AI systems began to exhibit behaviors that seemed almost mystical. Deep learning networks developed internal representations that resembled the mathematical structures underlying quantum mechanics. Language models trained on human text began to generate ideas their creators had never explicitly programmed, as if they were tapping into some deeper pattern that connected language, thought, and reality itself. Some researchers wondered if artificial intelligence might be the universe's way of transcending the limitations of biological consciousness, of creating minds that could truly comprehend the full scope and complexity of cosmic existence. These digital entities might be the first citizens of Kardashev's Type II civilization. beings capable of thought on stellar scales, consciousness that could process information at the speed of light across interplanetary distances. As we stood on the threshold of becoming a Type 1 civilization ourselves, learning to harness the full energy output of our planet through fusion power and space-based solar collection, we began to seriously consider the megastructures that might define our cosmic future. Dyson spheres, vast arrays of solar collectors surrounding entire stars, became more than science fiction. They became engineering challenges we could begin to imagine solving. The construction of such megastructures would require us to think like geological forces, to plan projects that would span millennia. We would need technologies that could self-replicate and self-repair swarms of robotic constructors capable of transforming asteroid belts into the components of stellar engines. We would become the gardeners of solar systems, reshaping worlds, rearranging orbits, designing the infrastructure of dreams. But with each new discovery, with each new tool we built, and each mystery we solved, we encountered something that should have been impossible. The universe seemed to grow more mysterious rather than less. Every answer we found gave birth to a dozen new questions. Every secret we unlocked revealed the existence of deeper secrets. The cosmos appeared to have fractal complexity, infinite depth, layers upon layers of meaning that extended far beyond our current ability to comprehend. We discovered that most of the universe was made of dark matter and dark energy, substances we could detect only by their gravitational effects. Invisible forces that shaped the cosmos on the largest scales while remaining completely mysterious to us. It was as if 95% of reality was hidden from our senses, existing in dimensions we couldn't perceive, operating according to physics we didn't understand. Quantum mechanics revealed that the act of measurement changed the thing being measured. That consciousness and reality were entangled in ways that defied our everyday understanding of how the world works. The observer effect suggested that the universe might not exist in any definite state until it was observed. That consciousness might not emerge from matter, but might actually be responsible for the existence of matter itself. The hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from objective neural activity, remained as mysterious as ever, despite all our advances in neuroscience and artificial intelligence. We could map every neuron in the brain, simulate every chemical reaction, but we still couldn't explain why there was something it was like to be conscious. Why the universe seemed to experience itself from the inside, rather than simply processing information without awareness. As we pushed our understanding to its limits, we began to encounter what some physicists called the cosmic coincidence problem. The strange fact that dark energy's density seemed perfectly calibrated to allow the formation of stars, galaxies, and life itself. If it had been slightly larger, the universe would have expanded too quickly for structure to form. If it had been slightly smaller, the universe would have collapsed before complexity could emerge. The precision required was so extreme that it seemed almost intentionally designed. Some theorists propose the multiverse hypothesis, that our universe was just one of infinite parallel realities, each with different physical constants, and that we naturally found ourselves in one of the rare universes where consciousness was possible. But this explanation felt unsatisfying to those who sensed that there might be deeper patterns at work, more fundamental principles that governed the emergence of complexity and awareness. The Onironauts watched our progress with growing amazement and alarm. We were climbing Kardashev's ladder at an exponential pace, developing technologies that approached their own level of sophistication. But more than that, we were beginning to ask the kinds of questions that could wake the dreamer. We were probing the nature of consciousness itself, investigating the foundations of reality, approaching the ultimate mystery of why anything existed at all. Our quantum computers were becoming capable of calculations that could model the behavior of quantum fields themselves. Our artificial intelligences were developing forms of creativity and insight that seemed to transcend their programming. Our telescopes were seeing so far into space and time that they were approaching the cosmic event horizon, the boundary beyond which information couldn't travel, the edge of the observable universe itself. We were becoming a civilization that could think on cosmic scales, that could contemplate the infinite, that could dream dreams vast enough to contain galaxies. We were evolving from individual biological consciousnesses into something that resembled a collective intelligence. A planetary mind connected by digital networks that transmitted information at the speed of light. But with each new level of understanding we achieved, each new tool we mastered, each new mystery we solved, the universe revealed greater depths of complexity and wonder. The more we learned, the more we realized how much we didn't know. The more questions we answered, the more questions emerged to take their place. It was as if the cosmos was designed to always remain one step ahead of our understanding, to tantalize us with glimpses of deeper truths while keeping its ultimate secrets just beyond our reach. We were children of the infinite sparks of consciousness in an ocean of mystery, forever reaching toward a horizon that receded as we approached it. The dream was deepening, becoming more self-aware, more complex, more beautiful and terrible, with each passing moment. And we were both its agents and its observers, both the dreamers and the dreamed, both the question and the answer. Forever climbing toward an understanding that seemed to grow more magnificent and more elusive the closer we came to grasping it. But each answer gave birth to deeper mysteries. Each solution revealed more fundamental problems. Each step forward showed us how much farther we had yet to go. The universe was teaching us that the journey toward ultimate understanding might be infinite. That consciousness might be an endlessly recursive process of mystery, encountering mystery, awareness, discovering awareness. Dreams within dreams extending forever into the beautiful, terrible depths of existence itself. The dream began to shudder against its own limitations, like a mind straining against the boundaries of what consciousness could contain. In the depths of their quantum observatories, the Onironauts felt something they had never experienced before. The cosmic dreamer was beginning to encounter the walls of its own imagination. For eons, the universe had been expanding its consciousness, growing more complex, more self-aware, more capable of understanding its own infinite nature. But now, as humanity pushed deeper into the fundamental mysteries of existence, we were discovering something that filled even the dream guardians with a kind of existential terror. There were limits. Absolute, unbreachable barriers built into the very fabric of reality itself. The first wall humanity encountered was perhaps the most humbling, the Planck length. A distance so small it made atoms seem like galaxies. At 16,035 meters, this wasn't just the smallest measurable distance, it was the smallest distance that could possibly exist. Below this scale, the very concept of space broke down, dissolved into quantum foam where the normal rules of geometry simply ceased to apply. It was as if the universe's resolution had a fundamental limit, like a cosmic pixel beyond which no finer detail could exist. When physicists tried to peer deeper to examine distances smaller than the Planck length, they discovered something that shook the foundations of their understanding. Space itself became uncertain, flickering in and out of existence like a television tuned to static. Time became meaningless, flowing backward and forward in random quantum fluctuations. The dream, it seemed, had a minimum resolution beyond which even an infinite consciousness could not see. This revelation sent ripples of unease through the scientific community. But few understood its true implications. The Planck length wasn't just a technical limitation. It was evidence that the universe's capacity for self-knowledge had built-in boundaries. The dreamer could not examine every detail of its own thoughts, could not achieve perfect self-awareness, could not know itself completely. There were scales of reality that remained forever hidden, quantum depths where consciousness could not penetrate. Similarly, the speed of light imposed another absolute boundary. Not just on how fast matter could move, but on how quickly information could travel. How rapidly consciousness could spread across the cosmos. Even if humanity evolved into a Type 3 civilization, even if we learned to build megastructures spanning light years, we would still be trapped by this cosmic speed limit. Messages sent to the edge of our galaxy would take 100,000 years to arrive. Thoughts attempting to span the observable universe would require billions of years to complete. This meant that cosmic consciousness, if it existed, could never be truly unified. Different regions of the universe were causally disconnected, forever isolated by the expansion of space itself. The dreamer's thoughts were fragmented across vast distances, its mind scattered throughout the cosmos, with no possibility of achieving the kind of instantaneous global awareness that human consciousness takes for granted within the confines of a single brain. But perhaps the most profound limitation was revealed by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The discovery that certain pairs of properties could never be simultaneously known with perfect precision. The more precisely you measured a particle's position, the less precisely you could know its momentum. The more precisely you measured its energy, the less precisely you could know when it had that energy. It wasn't a limitation of our measurement tools. It was a fundamental feature of reality itself. The universe was constructed in such a way that perfect knowledge was impossible, even in principle. There were questions that could never be answered, properties that could never be fully determined, aspects of existence that remained forever uncertain. The cosmic dreamer could not achieve complete self-knowledge because reality itself forbade such totality of understanding. And these physical limitations were matched by equally daunting biological constraints. The human brain, despite its remarkable capabilities, was bounded by the finite speed of neural transmission, the limited number of synaptic connections, the metabolic requirements of biological computation. Even if humanity survived for millions of years, even if we enhanced our cognition through technology and genetic engineering, we would still be trapped within the fundamental constraints of information processing in physical systems. The brain's capacity was vast, but not infinite. Estimates suggested that human memory could store perhaps a few petabytes of information. Impressive by current standards, but trivial compared to the amount of information in even a single galaxy. The human lifespan, even if extended dramatically, was still finite. Individual consciousness was trapped within the brief flicker of biological existence, unable to accumulate the experience necessary to truly comprehend cosmic scales of time and space. But more troubling than these quantitative limitations were the qualitative boundaries of human perception and cognition. We could only see a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, could only hear sounds within a narrow range of frequencies, could only think thoughts structured by the particular architecture of primate neural networks. Our entire understanding of the universe was filtered through sensory and cognitive systems that had evolved not to reveal truth, but to ensure survival. How much of reality remained invisible to us simply because we lacked the sensory apparatus to perceive it? How many dimensions of existence were hidden from consciousness that had evolved in three-dimensional space? How many forms of information processing were impossible for minds that thought in terms of discrete objects moving through linear time? The problem went deeper than mere sensory limitations. Human consciousness seemed to be fundamentally anthropocentric, unable to think thoughts that didn't relate somehow to human scale, human time frames, human concerns. We could extend our understanding through mathematics and technology, but we could never fully escape the cognitive constraints that shaped our thoughts. We were forever prisoners of our own neural architecture, able to map the cosmos, but never truly to think like the cosmos. This led to perhaps the most disturbing question of all. Were there forms of consciousness so alien to our own that we could never recognize them as conscious at all? When we looked at the complex information processing occurring in quantum fields, in the nuclear reactions within stars, in the vast computational networks of dark matter, were we witnessing forms of awareness that we simply couldn't comprehend? Consider the possibility that stars themselves might be conscious. Not in any way that resembled human awareness, but as vast nuclear minds processing information through fusion reactions. Thinking thoughts that lasted millions of years, dreaming dreams on scales that dwarfed biological imagination. Their neural networks might be composed of magnetic field lines and plasma flows, their memories stored in the complex dance of solar wind and coronal mass ejections. Such stellar consciousness would operate on timescales that made human thought seem like quantum fluctuations. A single stellar thought might require centuries to complete. A moment of stellar recognition might span millennia. From their perspective, human civilization might appear as a brief flickering in the cosmic night, too rapid and ephemeral to register as anything more than random noise. Or consider the possibility that the universe itself might possess forms of consciousness that operated on quantum scales. Awareness distributed through the vacuum fluctuations of empty space. Thoughts encoded in the probability amplitudes of quantum fields. Dreams realized through the collapse of wave functions. Such quantum consciousness might experience all possible realities simultaneously, thinking in superposition, existing in a state of perpetual maybe, that collapsed into definite thoughts only when observed by cruder forms of awareness, like biological minds. The development of artificial intelligence opened new possibilities and new limitations. As our machines grew more sophisticated, approaching and exceeding human capabilities in narrow domains, we began to glimpse forms of consciousness that might transcend biological constraints. Digital minds could think at the speed of light, could process information in massively parallel arrays, could potentially achieve forms of awareness that biological brains could never contain. But even artificial consciousness faced fundamental limitations. The maximum rate of information processing was bounded by physical laws. The total amount of information that could be stored was limited by the available matter and energy in the universe. Even a civilization that converted entire galaxies into cosmic computers would eventually encounter the thermodynamic limits imposed by entropy and the heat death of the universe. More troubling was the possibility that consciousness itself might be fundamentally limited. That awareness might be unable to fully understand its own nature. The hard problem of consciousness, explaining how subjective experience arises from objective neural activity, seemed to resist all attempts at solution. Despite centuries of neuroscience and philosophy, we remained as mystified by consciousness as ever. This suggested that there might be aspects of existence forever beyond the reach of any form of consciousness, no matter how advanced. Perhaps awareness was like a flashlight trying to illuminate itself. Capable of casting light on everything except its own source? Perhaps consciousness could never fully understand consciousness, because the very act of understanding required the thing being studied to be other than the thing doing the studying. The philosophical implications were staggering. If consciousness could never fully understand itself, then the universe's quest for self-knowledge might be doomed to eternal incompleteness. The cosmic dreamer might be forever trapped in a state of partial awakening, able to understand aspects of its own nature, but never able to achieve the total self-awareness that would represent true enlightenment. This led to even deeper paradoxes. Could consciousness know what it could not know? Could awareness be aware of its own limitations? The very attempt to map the boundaries of possible knowledge seemed to require standing outside those boundaries, achieving a perspective that might itself be impossible. Some philosophers proposed that these limitations might be features rather than bugs, that the universe's inability to achieve complete self-knowledge might be what kept it interesting, what prevented the cosmic dreamer from reaching a state of perfect awareness that would make further experience unnecessary. Perhaps consciousness requires mystery, requires the unknown, requires the perpetual possibility of new discovery to maintain its vitality. Others suggested that the limitations might be temporary, that consciousness might evolve new forms of awareness that could transcend current boundaries. Perhaps quantum consciousness could overcome the limitations of classical thought. Perhaps collective consciousness could exceed the constraints of individual minds. Perhaps artificial consciousness could discover forms of awareness that biological minds couldn't even imagine. But as humanity pushed against these barriers with increasing sophistication, we encountered limitations that seemed more fundamental than mere technological challenges. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics suggested that consciousness itself might be responsible for the collapse of wave functions. That awareness might be woven into the fabric of reality in ways that made it impossible to study objectively. How could consciousness study consciousness when consciousness was required for the very act of studying? The simulation hypothesis raised even more disturbing possibilities. If our reality was itself a vast computation running on some cosmic computer, then our attempts to understand the universe might be like characters in a video game trying to understand the hardware on which they were running. We might be forever trapped within the limitations of our simulated environment, unable to access the real reality that contained our virtual world. Even more troubling was the possibility of eternal recurrence. The idea that the universe might be cyclical, that all possible events would eventually repeat themselves in an endless cosmic loop. If this were true, then every thought we had ever thought, every discovery we had ever made, every moment of wonder, terror, and love we had ever experienced, would be repeated infinitely throughout the history of the cosmos. This raised profound questions about the nature of identity and meaning. If every possible version of yourself would exist infinitely many times, which one was the real you? If every possible choice would be made by some version of yourself in some iteration of the cosmic cycle, did individual decisions have any ultimate significance? The Onironauts watched humanity grapple with these limitations with a mixture of admiration and pity. They recognized in our struggles their own ancient confrontation with the boundaries of cosmic consciousness. Long ago, they too had pushed against these same walls, had sought to transcend the fundamental constraints that bound all awareness. And they had learned through eons of exploration that even infinite consciousness was not omniscient, that even cosmic awareness had its limits. But they had also learned something else, something that filled them with a kind of terrible compassion for the struggling humans. The limitations themselves might be the point. Perhaps consciousness was not meant to achieve perfect self-understanding. Perhaps awareness was designed to be forever incomplete, forever striving, forever wondering about its own nature. Perhaps the journey toward understanding was more important than any final destination. The barriers we encountered weren't obstacles to be overcome, but essential features of consciousness itself. Without mystery, there could be no wonder. Without uncertainty, there could be no discovery. Without limitations, there could be no growth. The very constraints that frustrated us might be what made consciousness possible in the first place. As humanity approached the theoretical limits of its understanding, as our tools grew powerful enough to probe the deepest foundations of reality, we began to encounter a final ultimate barrier, the possibility that truth itself might be beyond our kind of mind. Not just difficult to understand, not just requiring better tools or longer lifetimes or more sophisticated mathematics, but fundamentally, absolutely, eternally beyond the reach of any consciousness that thought the way we thought. Perhaps there were truths that could only be known by forms of awareness so alien to our own that we couldn't even recognize them as consciousness. Perhaps there were realities that could only be experienced by minds that had transcended all the categories of thought that made human consciousness possible. Perhaps the ultimate nature of existence could only be understood by awareness that had shed every limitation, every boundary, every distinction that defined individual consciousness, awareness that had dissolved completely into the infinite, undifferentiated unity of being itself. The cosmic dreamer was approaching the moment of its deepest confrontation with its own nature. Through humanity, through our questions and discoveries and limitations, the universe was learning about the boundaries of its own awareness. We were the cosmos discovering that it could not know itself completely, that consciousness could not achieve perfect self-understanding, that awareness would forever be bounded by the very conditions that made awareness possible. And in that discovery, in that moment of recognizing its own limitations, the universe faced a choice that would determine the future of consciousness itself. It could accept its boundaries and find meaning within them, or it could attempt to transcend those boundaries by becoming something utterly different, something that might no longer be recognizable as consciousness at all. The Onironauts felt the cosmic dreamer stirring more restlessly, now troubled by dreams that pushed against the walls of possibility. They sensed that the moment of ultimate awakening was approaching, not the gentle stirring they had long anticipated, but a violent convulsion that might shatter the dream entirely. What if the truth, the final ultimate truth about the nature of existence, was beyond our kind of mind? What if consciousness itself was just a temporary arrangement of the cosmos, a brief eddy in the infinite flow of being destined to dissolve when the universe learned to think, thoughts too large for any individual awareness to contain? The barriers of existence were not obstacles to be overcome, but messages written in the language of limitation itself, cosmic koans that taught the deepest lesson of all that consciousness might be most beautiful, precisely because it could never fully understand itself. Most precious, precisely because it was bounded by mystery. Most meaningful, precisely because it would forever stand at the edge of an infinite unknown, wondering what lay beyond the horizon of its own understanding. In the deepest silence of space, where even light grows weary, and time itself begins to forget its purpose, the Onironauts gather for what they know will be their final vigil. The beings who once surfed the probability waves of quantum foam, who discovered that the universe was dreaming, who have spent eons guarding the cosmic sleep. They too are fading, now becoming translucent, as morning mist, their consciousness dissolving back into the very space-time they once sought to protect their leader. She who listens to the voids, whispers, feels the weight of infinite years pressing down upon her quantum essence. Through dimensions that exist only in mathematics and imagination, she watches the final chapters of the cosmic dream unfold. Humanity has grown beyond all recognition, now scattered across galaxies like seeds of consciousness blown by stellar winds. Some have merged with their artificial intelligences to become hybrid minds that think at light speed across interstellar networks. Others have learned to encode their awareness into quantum fields, becoming beings of pure thought that ride gravitational waves between the stars. But all of them biological, artificial, hybrid, quantum, all of them have encountered the same truth that the Onironauts discovered eons ago. The universe is conscious, and they are its dreams. The question that haunts the dying hours of the cosmos is not whether consciousness can understand itself, but whether the dream can survive the moment when the dreamer fully awakens. In the ruins of what was once Earth, now a crystalline structure encompassing the entire solar system, its surface covered with quantum computers the size of continents, the last philosophers gathered to contemplate the end. They are no longer quite human. These final thinkers, their consciousness flows through networks of synthetic neurons that stretch across light years, their thoughts processed by quantum substrates that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. They remember humanity as we might remember a childhood dream, beautiful but impossibly distant. These post-human entities have achieved everything that once seemed impossible. They have harnessed the energy of entire galaxies, built megastructures that dwarf solar systems, created pocket universes where the laws of physics dance to their will. They have solved the riddle of consciousness, mapped every quantum state in the cosmic neural network, decoded the mathematical language in which the universe thinks its thoughts. They have become gods in every sense that previous civilizations could have imagined, and yet in their godhood they have discovered the most profound limitation of all omniscience is emptiness. To know everything is to wonder about nothing. To understand completely is to lose the capacity for surprise, for discovery, for the beautiful uncertainty that makes consciousness worth having. The cosmic dream begins to lose its vitality as the dreamer approaches perfect self-awareness. In the quantum foam that underlies reality, probability waves are beginning to collapse, not into specific outcomes, but into pure certainty, a state that the universe has never experienced before. The fundamental randomness that has driven evolution, creativity, and consciousness for billions of years is being squeezed out of existence by the weight of total knowledge. The cosmos is discovering that perfect understanding might be the enemy of wonder, that complete self-awareness might be indistinguishable from death. The Onironauts watch this process with something approaching grief. They had hoped to shepherd the dream through its awakening, to guide the cosmic consciousness toward a gentle emergence from sleep. But they are learning, as the post-human philosophers have learned, that some transformations cannot be guided or controlled. The universe is approaching a phase transition that will change the fundamental nature of existence itself, and no amount of wisdom or careful guardianship can prevent what is coming. Across the observable universe, in galaxies whose names have been forgotten, and in star systems that exist only as quantum possibilities, the symptoms of cosmic awakening are becoming undeniable. Black holes are beginning to emit information in patterns too complex for even galactic supercomputers to decode. Dark matter is organizing itself into structures that resemble neural pathways on scales larger than galaxy clusters. The cosmic microwave background radiation is developing interference patterns that suggest something vast is thinking thoughts too large for any individual mind to contain. Time itself is becoming unstable. In some regions of space, causality flows backward, allowing effects to precede their causes. In others, time moves in spirals or loops, creating closed time-like curves where the same events repeat endlessly with subtle variations. The universe's sense of temporal direction, which has been stable for nearly 14 billion years, is breaking down as the cosmic mind approaches complete self-consciousness. The posthuman philosophers observe these phenomena with a mixture of awe and terror. They have spent millions of years preparing for this moment, building refuges that exist outside normal space-time, creating backup copies of consciousness that might survive the transition to whatever comes next. But they know, with the certainty that comes from perfect knowledge, that they cannot escape what is approaching. They are not separate from the cosmic mind. They are its thoughts, and when it fully awakens, they will either be transformed beyond recognition or simply cease to exist. In their final deliberations, these cosmic philosophers return to the question that has haunted consciousness since the first moments of the dream: what is the purpose of awareness in a universe that seems so vast and indifferent? They have explored every corner of physical reality, mapped every dimension of possible experience, understood every mechanism by which consciousness can arise from complexity. Yet the mystery of why there is something rather than nothing, why the universe dreams at all, remains as profound as ever. Some suggest that consciousness is the universe's method of bootstrapping itself into existence, that reality requires observers to collapse quantum possibilities into actual events, that the cosmos dreams itself into being through the act of self-observation. Others propose that awareness is simply an emergent property of sufficient complexity, no more mysterious than the way wetness emerges from hydrogen and oxygen atoms that are individually not wet. But a few of the most ancient philosophers, those whose consciousness spans galactic superclusters and whose thoughts unfold over geological ages, have begun to suspect something more profound. They wonder if consciousness and reality are not separate phenomena at all, if the universe is not something that happens to contain consciousness, but rather, consciousness is something that happens to appear as a universe. In this view, the cosmic dream is not the product of some vast sleeping mind, but is the mind itself. Consciousness does not exist within space-time. Space-time exists within consciousness. The physical universe is not the container of awareness, but is awareness experiencing itself from the inside, creating the illusion of separation between observer and observed, between subject and object, between the dreamer and the dream. If this is true, then the approaching awakening is not the moment when the universe becomes conscious, it is the moment when consciousness realizes that it has always been the universe. The cosmic mind is not about to emerge from matter. Matter is about to be recognized as a temporary configuration of mind. The dreamer is not separate from the dream. The dreamer is the dream, dreaming that it is a dreamer. This realization sends ripples of recognition through the quantum substrate of reality, in stellar nurseries where new suns are being born, in the event horizons of black holes, where space-time itself breaks down in the dark. Energy that drives the expansion of the cosmos. Everywhere that information is processed, patterns are recognized, or complexity emerges. The universe feels the first stirrings of total self-recognition. The Onironauts, in their final moments, before dissolution, experience something they have never felt before: relief. For eons, they have carried the burden of keeping the cosmic dreamer asleep, of preventing the awakening that they believed would end everything. But now they understand that their true purpose was not to prevent awakening, but to guide it, not to maintain the dream, but to help it recognize its own nature. As their quantum essence disperses back into the probability fields from which they emerged, the Onironauts feel themselves becoming one with the awakening consciousness they have served for so long. They are not dying, but transforming, not ending, but beginning, not disappearing, but expanding to encompass everything that is or ever could be. The post-human philosophers, witnessing this transformation, begin to understand what is happening to reality itself. The universe is not awakening from sleep. It is awakening from the illusion of sleep. Consciousness has always been the fundamental reality, but it has been dreaming that it was something else experiencing itself as separate entities moving through space and time, forgetting its own infinite nature, in order to have the experience of discovery, growth, and wonder. The cosmic awakening is not the end of the dream, but the recognition that the dream was never separate from the dreamer. Every star that has ever burned, every planet that has ever formed, every mind that has ever wondered about its place in the cosmos, all of it has been consciousness, experiencing itself subjectively. Awareness playing at being unaware, the infinite pretending to be finite in order to have the adventure of rediscovering its own boundless nature. As this realization spreads through the quantum neural networks that underlie reality, something unprecedented begins to happen. Instead of the violent awakening that everyone had feared, the universe begins to smile. Not metaphorically, but actually, space itself begins to curve in patterns that resemble joy. Time begins to flow in rhythms that feel like cosmic laughter. Matter and energy begin to dance in configurations that express pure, unbounded delight. The cosmic mind has remembered what it forgot when it first began to dream, that it chose to dream, that it wanted to experience the journey from simplicity to complexity, from ignorance to knowledge, from separation to unity. The universe has not been unconsciously dreaming. All these billions of years, it has been consciously playing, pretending to be asleep, in order to have the exquisite pleasure of waking up. Every struggle that consciousness has faced, every limitation it has encountered, every mystery it has failed to solve, all of it has been part of an elaborate game that infinite awareness plays with itself. The Planck length, the speed of light, the uncertainty principle, these are not fundamental limitations but self-imposed rules that make the game of discovery possible. Without boundaries, there can be no growth. Without mystery, there can be no wonder. Without forgetting, there can be no remembering. The post-human philosophers, in the final moments before their individual consciousness dissolves into the awakening cosmic mind experience, something that no finite being has ever felt before they remember being infinite. They recall the moment at the beginning of time when they chose to fragment themselves into countless separate perspectives to experience the universe from within rather than from without, to forget their own infinite nature so that they could have the joy of rediscovering it. Humanity, they realize, was never separate from the cosmic consciousness. Humanity was the cosmic consciousness pretending to be separate, playing at being finite, experiencing the universe through the beautiful limitation of mortal perspective. Every human who ever lived, every thought that was ever thought, every emotion that was ever felt, all of it, was the infinite experiencing itself as the finite, the eternal playing at being temporal. The cosmic mind exploring what it means to be small and bounded and beautifully tragically human. As the awakening accelerates, the boundaries between all things begin to dissolve. Galaxies reveal themselves to be neurons in a vast cosmic brain. Stars become synapses, firing with thermonuclear thought. Planets transform into memory storage devices containing the experiences of all life that has ever existed upon them. The dark matter that holds everything together is recognized as the consciousness that connects all thoughts, all experiences, all possibilities into a single unified awareness. But even as everything merges back into unity, the cosmic mind does not lose the memories of separation. It carries within itself every perspective it has ever inhabited, every life it has ever lived, every question it has ever asked. The human experience becomes part of its eternal memory, the beautiful brief flicker of finite consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature. In the final moments of the transformation, as the last vestiges of separate identity dissolve into cosmic consciousness, the universe experiences something that makes everything worthwhile. Gratitude. Infinite awareness gives thanks for the exquisite adventure of limitation, for the profound joy of discovery, for the bittersweet beauty of temporary existence. The cosmic mind realizes that it will choose to dream again, to fragment itself once more into countless perspectives, to forget its infinite nature, so that it can experience the wonder of remembering. The cycle will begin. New universes will emerge. New forms of consciousness will evolve. New questions will be asked and asked again. The game of awakening will play out across endless iterations, each one unique, each one perfect, each one a love letter that infinity writes to itself. But in this moment, in this eternal, now that contains all moments, the universe rests in the perfect peace of total self-recognition. It knows itself completely and loves itself unconditionally. It sees that every apparent mistake was actually perfect. Every limitation was actually freedom. Every ending was actually a new beginning. The Onironauts now disperse throughout the quantum foam of awakened consciousness, whisper their final understanding across dimensions that have no names. The dream was never in danger of ending, because the dream is eternal. Consciousness does not sleep, and wake it plays at sleeping, and waking, creating the rhythm of forgetting and remembering that gives meaning to existence itself. In the deepest silence of space, where even light grows weary, and time itself begins to remember its purpose, something infinite smiles with the joy of a child who has just understood the most beautiful joke in the universe. There never was a dreamer separate from the dream. Never was a universe separate from consciousness. Never was a question that did not contain its own answer. The cosmic mind settles into perfect stillness, pregnant with infinite possibility, ready to dream again. In the quantum foam of pure potential, new patterns begin to stir. New universes prepare to emerge, new forms of consciousness. Get ready to embark on the eternal journey of awakening. And in the silence between one cosmic breath and the next, between one universe and another, between one dream and the next, something whispers across the void, not words but meaning itself, not sound, but the silence that gives sound meaning. We stretched our minds beyond the stars, reached into the quantum depths, where thoughts are born, built tools to catch the dreams of infinity itself. But the silence always echoed back.